Hi, how you doing? I I think I'm here. Sorry. No intros, no anything. That's just the way we go. So, you guys, so you're on me to do a lighter show, right? Yeah, that's what I said, Blue. Anyway, some of you actually sent me ideas. And I'm just going to get right to it. Since Blue is here, although the dog walker said she is going to show up today. So this is for Janet. I'll kill you. I don't. Janet said, speaking of a lighter tone, I noticed, where is it? You have a piano. Everything's backwards when I look at my. You have a piano in your house. Do you play? And why don't you play something? And I said, I used to play, but I used to play as a kid. I was really good as a kid, but then I stopped playing a lot. But now, not so much because I ended up getting this awful condition called Dupuytren's contracture. You see it advertised, stuff for it advertised, uh, on TV. Although I swear they don't know what to do about it. I've had surgeries, I've had this, that, but two of my fingers are like stuck like this. I guess I could show you which ones. They're stuck. The babies. And to play the piano, you need your hands to be able to like stretch, and mine can't. I can't play an octave anymore, and it just trips up everything, and I sort of have stopped playing because of it. The other reason I stopped playing is because when I do play, Blue, my dog, sings, and it cracks me up so that I can't play. And so, hi, Fat Mandy. She just checked in on, hi. There's a wondrous being. So anyway, Janet said, why don't you play the piano? And I thought, you know what, Blue, would you like to try to show people how you sing? This is going to be a big mistake, but I will off the bat. You wanted an easy show. I'm undoing my mic. Okay. Because I'm unplugging it. I'll leave all this crap on. Oh, that doesn't make any sense. I'm undoing my mic. I'm assuming you can still hear me, right? And oh God. Hey, Blue, do you want to try to sing something? Let's try. So okay. Don't look at my house. It's in a state of disrepair. Okay, here. There's the dog. Wait, there's the dog. Now, Blue. Okay, here. Let's see if you will sing for people. Okay? Now, we are going to show, we're going to sing. I noticed I had this. I didn't know I had it, and I've never played it, but it's in the key of C and looks easy. Okay, Blue, you ready? He's never heard this either. Are you going to sing? Where is he? I don't have a clue. All right, you asked for it, and here we go. There he is. Okay. Oh, God. Okay, here comes the next part, Blue. I can't see the notes. Okay, we're ending big, Blue. Okay, here we go. It's an octave. I can't do it. That's good. And here's the last one. Well, he was better than me. All right, you wanted it, you got it. Now I'm going back. Oh, God. Okay, here we go. Hey, you see that? I don't normally. You see this? What? This is my incredible thing that I have. I wouldn't normally show it off. It moves. It's pieces of coal. Isn't that amazing? So I bought it, and then I brought it. Well, it had to be shipped. You can't imagine how it arrived. Every piece of coal was wrapped. It was beyond belief, whoever wrapped it. And then I got it home, and it turned out that my ceiling was too low. So you can't, well, I actually had to have a hole, see it, right? Yeah, a hole put in my ceiling to hang it. And when the guys finished hanging it, one of them stood back and looked at it, and he said, "Wow, that is probably the most expensive cat toy I have ever seen." Yeah. So I didn't mean to show you my house. This is getting way too intimate. Okay, now that was thanks to Janet. Good job, Blue. And now I don't have to worry about it anymore. I've embarrassed myself. Okay. So I'm glad you heard it. Let me plug myself back in here. Yeah, guys, I guess I know we need a break, but it's hard, it's hard to know what to do. Okay, wait, I can't. I think I'm up. I'm running. Just let me get this on. Oh, God. Okay. Whew. There. Okay, do you like it? You want us at the Super Bowl. Yeah, I'd have time to practice. I could even do it a lot better, I assure you. And Blue never heard that. So he was, because sometimes he actually tries, if there's a note that's held for a long time, he holds his. He's like, oh, and then I'll stop and he'll stop. And then if there's staccato stuff, he's like, whoop, 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 whoop. So it is, it's ridiculous. I don't know. So anyway, there you have it. Oh, God. All right, Janet. Oh, and here, I'm just looking at your, so you did like it. I'm glad. So anyway, what Fat Man D is saying, I was not expecting that. The thing is that it's the audience is exhausted because I am a sayer of doom, and they need a break, and I guess we all do. So I'll try, but you know, it's tough because if you guys could call in, we could have so much fun. We could do a whole show complaining about the roads. God damn. What I did is I wanted to be able to take him for a WALK, and there's no way I'm doing it where I live because it's a death spiral hill that I first, not a huge one, but enough of one that, and it's not really plowed. It's sort of kind of plowed, and so I got in the car with him and we ventured out yesterday to look for a neighborhood where people had actually shoveled their sidewalks so we could, go for a walk and not die. And I go right to the rich people neighborhood. So I went over to like Amberson and Westminster Place and that area. I don't know if you know it. It's near, in Shadyside. And it's flat. The thing is the snow up on the sides of the street was so high, I couldn't really see if the sidewalks were clear. But then I got enough peaks to think, yeah, they are. And then I couldn't find a place to leave the car while I'd get out and let him poop on the rich people's snow. There was no place to park because everything is parked in, or if there is a space, it's taken. And, so it's ridiculous. I mean, when was this friggin' storm? It's 4 days after. It's unbelievable. And I mean, I was thinking, Cullen, back off. I mean, since I've lived here, there have been maybe 3. I've been here for almost 40 years. I've been here for over 40 years. What am I talking about? I've been here for almost 50 years. And there's only been 3, I think, snows that were bigger than this. And Pittsburgh is just not, it's not used to it. It's not set up for it. Then you add hills and narrow streets and cars parked on them. And it's a lot. It is hard. But the thing is about snow like this, you can't just shove it to the side. You have to remove it. And that's what they're not used to doing. That's another step that people who come from snowy places like I do in Wisconsin, you plow it, but then you don't just shove it. You then pick it up and stick it in trucks and take it away. And whatever. I'm okay. It just, if I hadn't been through COVID, I think I would have been going nuts. But it just feels like COVID again. I'm used to. So anyway. And I checked the weather this morning. I have that little weather app. Checked the weather and it said it was 0 when I checked it. And then there was this, it says it's been for the last week, National Weather Service special weather statement. And it essentially, the special weather statement says, Jesus Christ, it's cold. And they make it into some kind of an emergency thing. Okay, yeah, people wouldn't know. We know it's cold. And And I always had Green Bay right next to it, so I just swiped and got Green Bay, and we got Green Bay with Green Bay was -2. But what I noted is in the Green Bay weather, which is exactly set up like ours, the National Weather Service doesn't have that statement, even though it's even colder there. And I thought, that's funny. So this warning shit about, guys, special weather statement, life-threatening conditions, it's cold. They don't do that for like Minnesota or Wisconsin. They just do it for us like we're stupid. Someone, Janet is saying today at 10, UPMC will announce $10 million donation for city paramedic vehicles. Well, thank you very much, UPMC. Now, how about coughing up about 5 times that much and then doing it again next year and the year after that and the year after that, and then maybe I'll throw you a party. When I don't like something, I really just don't like it. I'm sorry. So, that Springsteen song, you've heard it, right? You have to have, and if you haven't, look for it. Thank you. And I want to see more. And in fact, there's a British family, I think they're called the Marsh family. They have come up with a song, which is wonderful, about Minneapolis. We need to just keep them going. And this, okay. Oh no, I forgot. I'm not supposed to get into that. Okay, I'll stop. This isn't easy. Oh, here's the other thing. So Janet wanted me to maybe play the piano she saw, and also asked me something about the pit, and I'll maybe get back to that. That's the TV show. And then Richard wrote me, and he said, just to help, here's some questions you could answer that would get us off the usual, Armageddon, the world is ending, the fascists are coming stuff. And so he had these questions, and I'll read them. I wrote them down. I'll read them to you. Did I ever consider moving back to Green Bay? On radio, did you dread seeing the names of certain callers? Was I ever in Doug Hurth's apartment? And was it as sparse as he suggested it was? Also, 2 more questions. How exhausting were those blabathons that we used to do for 9 hours, all the talkers? And when I was a weather girl back in the day, did I know anything about the weather? So I wrote them down and thought, okay, I could do that. But then I noticed that under Richard's email, he sent it to my Gmail account, Lynn Cullen Show at Gmail. And fucking AI had answered the questions. I was looking at something, it was my response. It had written out, I was reading his email, and on my own computer, I saw that a response had just bango showed up, and it was labeled question 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and answered all of Richard's questions. I cannot begin to tell you how creeped out I am. What the fuck? You want to hear the answers? First of all, how could AI know the answer to any what? I'm screaming, aren't I? How could AI know the answer to any one of those questions? How? You tell me. Did I ever consider moving back to Green Bay? AI knows. Did I dread certain callers? Had I been to Doug Hurt's apartment? What the fuck? You want to hear the answers? Creepy. Number 1, Green Bay? No, way too cold. 2, dread seeing callers? Absolutely. Some folks never learned when to say, I can't even read the rest of that. Oh, and I forgot this one. Did you ever think about banning JT? He was a prolific caller. And it says JT banned? Yes, eventually. You know, so far, it's sort of got one answer right. Everything else is wrong. Doug's apartment? Yes. That's wrong. Blabathon's exhausting. Got that one right. And it got the weather girl thing right. It said with such personality about, did I know anything about weather when I was a weather girl? AI said to Richard, not a lick. Oh, God. I hate this world we're in. I just fucking hate it. What? You guys, I'm sorry. So I'm looking at, I already told you this once. A friend told me every time you go like this, your nose, it probably looks like George Washington's on Mount Rushmore. So what the fuck? Ski down it. I don't care. Janet says, did you know Ed and Wendy King's party line? Wait a minute, babe. Did you know Ed and King? So listen, here's the thing. I can't even run my own computer. I can't. Did I know Ed and Wendy's King party line back in the day? Ah! I just shoved it, took us off. Do you see me? You still see me. I don't have a screen in front of me. What did I just do? And how do I get me back? Oh, I'm back. Okay. Okay. Maybe I have to. Okay. Did I ever tell you Wendy King, Ed and Wendy King's? I'm looking. I'm so afraid of touching anything. Sorry, guys. Son of a bitch. Did you know Ed and Wendy King's party line from back in the day? I've certainly heard about it. People called into the radio show and you could not hear them, and the host would relay the caller's subject. Yes, I did. I've heard that, and it's just wonderful. And I know they were delightful. And Wendy King once got in touch with me and told me she enjoyed my show, which meant the world. And Judy says, Green Bay. Wow, I didn't know that. Well, listen to my accent, for God's sake. You betcha. Green Bay. And it turns out Judy, that was the big city for Judy. Mom and I shopped there for clothes once or twice a year because we were from Iron Mountain. Fuck a duck. Judy. Iron Mountain, guys, is north of Green Bay. It's north of Green Bay. Wow. Cool. And Green Bay would have been the biggest city and a bit of a schlep. Where would you close? Oh, I bet you went to, I don't know if it was still there. I don't know how old you are. Prangies, right? Okay, wait a minute. Rust Belt says UPMC is way too big and needs to be reined in. They go all the way out to where my partner lives in Hanover and down to my old hometown of Cumberland, Maryland. They are becoming they're overseas. They're in the Middle East. They're in Ireland, I think. They're everywhere. But they won't help in the way they certainly could the city that is their headquarters and their home. The sons of bitches. All right. Okay, whatever. Blah, 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 blah. I'm sorry. Okay, it's hard for me to read and to do the show. Anyway, Richard's question: did I ever consider moving back to Green Bay? No. And not because of the weather, because I mean, my life is here. I've lived in Pittsburgh more than twice as long as I lived in Green Bay. I was born in Green Bay and raised in Green Bay, and the family home is still in the family. My sister has essentially moved in. But no. But my family's roots, or as we said in Green Bay, roots, my family's roots are deep in Green Bay. Did I ever dread seeing certain callers? Yeah, sure. And, you can avoid them. You don't have to take the call, or you do. I think the thing about this show is I didn't know who was calling. It was always Russian roulette. It was blind. But on radio, the producer would give me a name and location of where they were. So, yeah. I was never in Doug's apartment. I did go to him once. He lived in Bellevue. He asked me to pick him up for Lawrence's, his dearest friend and producer, Lawrence Gaines' funeral. And Doug and I sat together and I drove him home. He didn't ask me in. And I never saw Doug again. Lawrence's death did him in. The Blabathons were obviously totally exhausting, ridiculously exhausting. And no, I knew absolutely nothing as a weather girl. I'm sure I've told the story a million times. It was my first job in television. I'd never been on television. I knew nothing about the weather. And I had the gall to show up and apply for that job in Madison, Wisconsin. And they hired me. Well, what happened was they had a guy, poor guy. They had a guy on the weekends. It was a weekend weather girl. They had a guy doing, I think his name, my God, his name just popped in my head, Bob Terry. And he was doing the weather. And I remember sitting in the general manager's office with the news director and the two of them talking while I'm sitting there. And the general manager said, I think it'd be funny. He said, we could have her on one side. See, there was just this big, huge map of the United States painted on the wall. There wasn't any radar. There wasn't anything. There was just this big effing map, and maybe about, geez, 6, 7 feet wide. And he said, Bob could stand on the East Coast. She can stand on the West Coast. And, they'll banter. And I think it'd be funny. And they especially liked the fact that I was the antithesis of what weather girls were. They were always blonde. I had long, I looked like Pocahontas. I had long black hair. I wore boots. I was a hippie. And so it happened. They never even asked if I knew anything about the weather. I don't think Bob knew anything about the weather either. But I don't know when it happened, but at some point, poor Bob wasn't there anymore, and they just gave it to me. And I was off and running. I've got lots of funny weather stories, but I don't. Oh, Judy says, yes, we shopped at Prangy's. That was the only department store in Green. There was pretty much nowhere else to go. For girls, there was a place called Flato's. Andrea Flato was my age, and I knew her. But Green Bay being the big city you go to, that's a riot. Okay. How we doing on time? As long as I'm just letting it all hang out here. I saw an obit that did remind me of an event in my life, and I always thought it was a funny story, so maybe I'll tell it. The obituary was in yesterday's New York Times. I've highlighted certain facts, so I'll be able to jump right to them. It's the obit of a 98-year-old man named George Cabot Lodge. And if you're an old news junkie, that name rings lots of bells, because the Cabot Lodges were a big political family from Boston. And if I were to ask you, what's a big political dynastic kind of political family from Boston? I mean, most people would say the Kennedys, right? But the Lodges were sort of there before the Kennedys. And the two of those families, they ran against each other all the time. The Cabots, the Cabot Lodges, representing the established Boston Protestant Republicans, and the upstart Irish Catholics, represented by the Kennedys. And before the Kennedys, actually, the Fitzgeralds. JFK's mom, Rose, considered the matriarch, was actually the daughter of the mayor of Boston, whose name was Honey Fitz. That's what they was called, Fitzgerald. Quite a character. So she brought the political bona fides to her marriage to Joe Kennedy. Anyway, I don't know that I have to go back and forth here, but the Henry Cabot Lodge Sr. ran against JFK's grandfather, honey fits for a Senate seat and just blew away honey fits. So the Cabot Lodges won round one. And then the families went right back. And the guy who'd beaten Honey Fitz's son ends up running against John F. Kennedy back from World War II, the year 1952, and JFK beat him. So the Senate seat went from the Cabot Lodges to the Kennedys with JFK's first win. The guy who lost to JFK, I'm going to quiz you on this later. The guy who lost to JFK in that first Senate race was the father of the guy who's dead, whose obit okay. And then Henry Cabot Lodge Jr., who lost to JFK for that Senate seat, lost to him again, but this time on a much bigger ticket. The year was 1960, and John F. Kennedy was running for the presidency against Richard Nixon. And Richard Nixon's running mate was Henry Cabot Lodge, who JFK had beaten for the Senate race. So Kennedy beat him again because Kennedy beat Nixon in a rigged election. So the Lodges and the Kennedys, woo, 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 woo. And what's interesting is this guy who's dead later ran he was the last one. He ran for the Senate after JFK had been assassinated. He ran for the Senate. No, I think JFK was still alive. 1962. He ran for the Senate against Teddy Kennedy, who was obviously running to take his brother's Senate seat. What the hell? Anyway, an interesting thing about this Henry Cabot, this George Cabot Lodge, who's dead, he loved the Kennedys. I'm not so sure that was true a few generations back. But when you get up to this guy, the dead guy, and Ted Kennedy, they liked each other. They ran against each other, but they liked each other. And at one point, the dead guy says, I don't suppose that there ever has been a public servant who I've admired more than President Kennedy and Bobby. I can't remember a thing on which we disagreed. And that's a Republican. Those were the days, huh? In fact, this guy, the dead guy, George Cabot Lodge, he became a Democrat. When Barry Goldwater got nominated for the Republican nomination for the presidency in 64, George Cabot Lodge said, I'm out of here. And he became a Democrat. Good guy. He had a good life. Now, the story I wanted to tell, I'm a little loath to tell it because I don't come off well in it. But since it happened like 60 years ago, I think statute of limitations and the fact that I was very slow to mature or get my feet under me. Um, it gets me off the hook in my eyes, okay? But the story is when I saw George Cabot Lodge, it bang brought this memory back. I was 2021. I was living in New York City. I had dropped out of college. I was wandering. I was the epitome of the 60s generation of sort of, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And I was a wandering Jew. But I had gotten myself to New York because I was attending the neighborhood playhouse school of the theater. And as was a kid from Pittsburgh, 17-year-old kid named Jeff Goldblum. And that's how Goldblum, and that's when we knew each other pretty well. Very well, I would say. So there I was. And I get a phone call from a woman who I had gone to Northwestern University with. And God, why do these names come back to me when I can't remember my next door neighbor's name now? She was a tiny little thing. Her name was Martha Loss. And she got in touch and said, "Hey, I'm living in this amazing place. And we're throwing, it's going to be an amazing Halloween party. And I think you should get up here." She was in Boston. And she proceeded to tell me she was living in Henry Cabot Lodge's home. I bet they had more than one. So I'm not sure. It was this Henry Cabot Lodge's house, which the lodges had like abandoned in some respect. And it was sort of just sitting there, I think on the market maybe. And whoever had, they were renting it out, rooms. I can't imagine. And Martha Loss was living in a room in Henry Cabot effing Lodge's mansion. And she said, and there's guys also who live here from the Jay Giles band. I said, "What?" "Yeah, and they're going to play and people are really going to get dialed up and you got to see this place and blah, blah, blah." So I'm there. I found out from someone at the neighborhood playhouse that you could go down to the theater district to this specific place and rent costumes that had been in Broadway plays. There was this huge place that just had anything and everything you could want. Well, whoa. I went. I was astonished at how cheap it was. And I got myself a getup that was like a queen. I was a queen. Of course, every girl wants to be a princess, even a hippie girl. It was the most astonishing queen outfit. And up I went. I'm only able to tell you the few memories I have. I was shown up to my room. I had my own room. And it was 3 times as large as the apartment I lived in New York. It had a fireplace. It was this ridiculous thing. It was my room for the night. And I remember getting into my queen regalia. I don't remember when I dropped the acid or who offered it. But it must have been right after that or right before it, because when I got into the queen regalia and decided to descend the staircase to the party, and by the way, there were so many staircases, I wasn't sure I'd ever find my room again. But the party was, whoa, you could hear it. And the queen, who was tripping, was descending the staircase. So lost in my own, royalty. And unbelievably, standing at the bottom, I kid you not, was a fucking prince. This gorgeous, tall, beautiful man in full prince regalia. And he was standing there and looking at me descend, and he held out his hand. Oh my God. Well, okay. Cut to the chase. We had a good time, the prince and I. Really a good time. The next morning, he suggested we walk around this big pond that was on the estate, and we did. And in that walk around the pond, we sort of shared the kind of information that most people would have shared before they woke up, like, what's your name? And that's when I found out that my prince was a fucking Green Beret. Yeah. Anyway, so George Cabot Lodge, dead at 98, brought that whole thing back. And there is a little addendum. Just I got an STD. I'd never had an STD. In fact, back in the day, they didn't call them STD. I was simply informed that I had gonorrhea. And oh my God, the city of New York's health department got in touch with me. I had to fill out fucking forms, and I had to tell them everybody I'd had sexual congress with in the last. It was beyond belief. It was humiliating, appalling, horrifying, and it was all courtesy of my prince, who turned out to be a Green Beret. And I might have forgotten all that if George Cabot Lodge hadn't dropped dead. I guess he might, who knows? He might have grown up in that house. I don't know. Oh. If I've appalled some of you, I apologize. But guys, I went on to live a rather exemplary life once I got my feet under me. But yeah, my early 20s were, but I was hardly alone. My God. Well, how do I top that? Um, The Pit. Um, I do like it. I wonder if we like it more because it's here, probably. I don't know. Um, and I do wanna say I do wanna share this one thing with you that is slightly related to, the horrors of Minneapolis, but it does involve the pit, and that's one of the things Janet, who made me play the piano, also mentioned, I could talk about. Um, a guy named Shane O'Neill, and I think he was writing in the Washington Post, I think. Um, he wrote a piece called "How the Pit Shaped How I Saw Alex Petrie." And in this piece, he shows a picture of Alex Petrie that we've all seen. He's in blue scrubs. It's just pretty much from his torso up. He's in blue scrubs and that kind face, but he puts that picture next to a picture of Noah Wiley, the actor who plays Dr. Robbie, the lead in The Pit. And damn, they in scrubs, and I mean, they look like twins. And he goes on to say how he's every time he sees Petrie's picture, he thinks of the pit, and he says when he thinks of the pit, he thinks, of what the late great movie critic Roger Ebert once called an empathy machine. That a movie that really moves you is one that generates empathy. And this guy writing says, and what Ebert said about empathy and a good movie applies to The Pit. So I'm just going to read this little bit. This is Roger Ebert. For me, the movies are like a machine that generates empathy. If it's a great movie, it lets you understand a bit more about what it's like to be a different person, a different gender, a different race, a different age, a different economic class, a different nationality, a different profession, different hopes, aspirations, dreams, facts, fears. Not facts, fears. It helps us to identify with the people who are sharing this journey with us. And that, to me, is the most noble thing that good movies can do. And it's a reason to encourage them and to support them and to go to them. And I think this guy is right. That's what The Pit does do with its, cacophonous changing from this person, that patient, to this patient, to that nurse, to this doctor, to blah, 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 and all of these disparate lives just coming together, intersecting, then moving on, that you are, and they do it beautifully. And the most recent episode, and I'm not, for those of you who are maybe behind but are watching, it'll be on tonight, the next one, but the one from last Thursday was very Pittsburgh oriented, from Zambelli being the epitome of what fireworks are to be, and to Tree of Life and that horror. And the way they brought Tree of Life in was really rather wonderful, because it involved an older woman who came in with a horrible burn because she'd been lifting up a samovar, something for boiling water, hot water, and somebody had set off. It takes place on July 4th. Somebody had set off a firecracker, and she jumped, and the hot water burned her. And in talking to Dr. Robbie, she explains that she had been at Tree of Life that day. And that ever since, the sound, a sudden bang like a firecracker, just startles her. So it was about, post-traumatic stress disorder in a way, and how it just never leaves you. I once told you recently, didn't I? No, I didn't. That was something else. But I did. I had a horrible accident when I was a child, 6, 7, 8 years old, 7, and my head went through a window, a glass window, and it doesn't happen anymore. But I would say for the next 30 years of my life, it had to be a certain level of, if a glass shattered, somebody dropped a glass, it had to be a certain exact sound, but my blood would run cold, because that's the sound as my ears passed through that glass that they heard, and it was embedded in me. And so I understand that. The other wonderful thing about the Tree of Life thing is one of the nurses there is Muslim, and she and the woman thanks her, because she tells her that the Muslim community was like out of the gates, the first community in Pittsburgh that reached out to the Jewish community, and in fact, something that a lot of people didn't know, and raised money to pay for the funerals. So there's all that. Good God, we did it, guys. Janet said, get to the Muslim part, you're running out of time. God, you guys, you ride her, don't you? Okay, we're done. Again, whatever. Back to the horror on Monday. I suspect God knows what'll happen between now and then. Don't buy for a minute that this pullback or change in nothing has changed, except that maybe the extraordinary people of Minneapolis have scored a victory. But man, the battle, the war, nothing has changed. And these sons of bitches, as you know, going into a Georgia election office yesterday, you know what I mean. Nothing has changed. It's the same crowd. And even if they throw a scapegoat here or a scapegoat there overboard. Their intent remains the same. Absolute power and taking our democracy away. The fucks. Listen, it's going to be colder. It's going to make today and yesterday look like a heat wave this weekend. So you don't need a National Weather Service alert to tell you it's cold as a witch's tit. And please, please be smart. That's all. Smart. And I know you are. Thank you very much. And see you again Monday.